Welcome back to QAV America, Tony, episode 15. We are recording this July 22nd, Australian time, 2025. Just did our Australian show. Now, talking about America. For new listeners, welcome. We're two Australian value investors that have been doing a podcast in Australia for about 6 years on value investing. And now we're doing one on the American market as well, where each week I take a company on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ in theory, but they always tend to be New York Stock Exchange because our system of value investing doesn't tend to score very many NASDAQ companies very highly. But there's a lot to choose from on the New York Stock Exchange. So I pick one every week that scores highly in our system of looking for quality companies. And by quality companies, I mean a lot of different things, but essentially generating a lot of cash is the big one that we're looking for. And then we look at the valuation. What can we buy them at a discount? We're looking for companies that generate a lot of cash and particularly interested in the ones that we can buy at a discount to what we think their intrinsic valuation is. Then I'll do a little bit of a deep dive or a pulled pork as we call them. And this week, this is a terribly dirty company story. Yeah, I think last week we were talking about dirty oil or dirty something. This week it's dirty drugs.
We were talking about coal tar last week.
That's right. Well, this time it's dirty drugs and dirty contact lenses. You don't want your contact lenses to be dirty, but turns out the business of contact lenses is dirtier than I realized. So the company is called Bausch Health. You're probably familiar with Bausch & Lomb, the eyewear brand. Well, this is the parent company. Now, confusingly, Bausch Health, BHC, is the company that I'll be talking about. Bausch & Lomb is a separately listed company on the New York Stock Exchange. They spun it out. I think it's BLCO is Bausch & Lomb. Not talking about Bausch & Lomb, though. I'm talking about Bausch Health. They still own 90%, I think, of Bausch & Lomb. They floated off a small amount of it. And they might float off the rest of it too, which I'll get to. But this is BHC. Now, I do want to preface this by saying, from a sentiment chart perspective, they are currently what we call a Schrodinger. They are above their buy line, but slightly below their sell line. So they're simultaneously a buy and a sell. So we wouldn't buy them. They just tipped down. They were a buy. So I ran my checklist, my buy list like 2 weeks ago. They were a buy at the time. They've just dipped a few cents below. Well, it's a bit more than a few cents. Their sell price is $6.49. They're currently about $6.31. So they've dropped 18 cents or so below their buy line. So we wouldn't buy them at this stage, but I'm going to talk about them anyway because they could pop back up above that at any given moment. They're a global, diversified American-Canadian, really Canadian-American, because they come out of Canada, pharmaceutical company, primarily. Global corporate headquarters are in Quebec, at a place called Laval in Quebec. Its US headquarters are in New Jersey, which is fitting because I think for a long time they sound like they were run by like the mob.
Allegedly.
No, it sounds like they were run like the mob. Not by the mob, like the mob. Dirty. Very, very dirty. They develop, manufacture, and market a range of pharmaceutical products, from diarrhea to constipation, from female horniness to itchy skin conditions and better contact lenses. They've got it all covered. Although they sold off their female Viagra product, but it's a really good story. I'm going to get to that later on. They've had a bunch of scandals over the last decade in particular. They actually had other scandals going back to the 90s, but this is a company that has a stank on it. They've had lots of very, very expensive headline-grabbing corporate scandals over the last 20, 30 years. And that's one of the reasons I think why they're cheap at the moment. It's just one of the reasons. So bad they had to do a rebrand to try and get away from the stink on their brand. So they used to be known as Valeant, Valeant, but then about 7 or 8 years ago they changed their name to Bausch. So people, as I said before, if you wear glasses or you have ever walked past a glasses shop, you've probably heard of Bausch and Lomb. They're a pretty big global brand. This is the parent company. They bought that business quite some years ago. But they're really a post-scandal rebrand of this company, Valeant Pharmaceuticals. They have one of the filthiest backstories on the market. About 10 years ago, they were in a heap of trouble in the US for all sorts of things. Jacked up drug prices, lied about sales, cooking the books, blew up one of the most famous hedge funds on Wall Street, your old friend Bill Ackman. Then they changed their name in 2018 to, I guess in hope that the market would forget, and it hasn't really. But this is how it all went down. I mean, the company goes way back many, many years, started by, I think it was a Canadian pharmacologist, but it went through decades of development. In 2003, it was called ICN Pharmaceuticals, changed their name to Valeant, and decided the guy who was the CEO at the time decided they didn't want to develop drugs, they just wanted to buy existing brands. So he started doing this massive roll-up, a debt-fueled roll-up of other smaller drug companies. Stopped really spending on R&D and just started borrowing like crazy, gobbling up small drug companies. And then once they bought it, jacking the prices up through the roof. They would buy an old medicine, cut costs, raise the price, and then milk the hell out of it. Got some examples. In 2015, they bought 2 old cardiovascular hospital drugs, Isuprel and Nitropress, and then raised the prices overnight by 525% and 212% respectively. No new research, no better version, just a new sticker price. And that wasn't a one-off. They did that on 62 different drugs, raising the prices in some cases by more than 500%, and one antifungal called flucytosine is being sold in the US for 10,000% more than it was costing in Europe. 10,000%. So they got themselves in all sorts of trouble with Congress. There was a media storm around it. Then in 2015, the activist firm Citron Research short seller Andrew Left, who I think we've talked about before, he's one of these guys that, like in The Big Short, uncovers companies that he thinks are doing dodgy stuff, and then he shorts them and then, writes about them and tries to destroy the business. Yeah. He accused them of accounting fraud in 2015 through a shady pharmacy network called Philidor. His allegations were that they had a fake pharmacy that they secretly controlled. Then they would use it to push their own expensive drugs and make the numbers look better than they really were. Valeant employees were allegedly working at Philidor under fake names. So basically, Valeant people pretending to be Philidor people, emailing doctors and insurers using fake aliases to hide the connection. The whole thing blew up in October 2015. Valeant denied it at first, then tried to quietly cut ties with Philidor and get rid of the whole thing. Meanwhile, Bill Ackman, the guy who runs the Pershing Fund, an activist investor, one of the biggest names on Wall Street, loved Valeant. He took a massive position in Valeant over the years. At its peak, he was up billions of dollars. He loved the business model. Then when all of this stuff about the price gouging inquiries and the Philidor allegations all blew up, the share price dropped from $262 to under $15, and he sold the lot. He lost $2.8 billion dumping his stake and had to walk away. He's still around though, and he did okay. He's invested in lots of things, but he called it a very costly mistake. But I was reading through, like, he was pumping these guys up massively, and then it all just collapsed like a house of cards. But the dirt goes back even further. So their eye care unit, Bausch and Lomb, were caught in the 90s selling the same contact lenses under different names and different prices. Same product, different labels, different price tags. One was marketed to last a year, another would only last a month, and another would last for only 2 weeks. Exactly the same contact lens. And they got in trouble. The states sued them. They settled for $68 million in 1996 and agreed to stop. So I remember that a similar sort of thing happened here, I think, with Nurofen a few years ago, wasn't it? They got caught doing a similar sort of thing.
Well, similar, yeah. I mean, they had, if you walked into a grocery store in Australia, you'd have different versions of Nurofen, one for backache, one for migraine, one for this and that, but they were all the same tablet, allegedly.
Same thing, yeah. But these guys sort of have a history of price gouging and not being exactly the nicest people on the block. Really, really full-on aggressive marketing of pharmaceuticals. Then, this is my favorite story. There was this company called Sprout Pharmaceuticals, developed by a woman called Cindy Eckert. They developed this drug called Adye, which was a female Viagra. I think it had been originally discovered for lowering blood pressure or something like that, a bit like Viagra. It had another pharmaceutical use. Then people found out that it made women horny, and so they started marketing it. She got approval from the FDA in 2015 to sell it as a female Viagra. Valeant bought it the next day for $1 billion. But that was 2015, just as all of this price gouging stuff started to blow up. She then sued them 2 years later because part of the agreement when they bought it was they had to do a good job marketing it. She must have been getting a percentage of the sales or the profits or something as part of the deal. And they didn't do a good job. So she got it back basically for nothing.
Ooh.
They had to give it back to her a couple of years later for essentially for free. So she sold it for $1 billion and then got it back a couple of years later.
Well,
which,
if that doesn't make you excited, then nothing.
She was excited.
Yeah.
Worked for her. Yeah. I'm sure. So that was a great story. So then the CEO, J. Michael Pearson, I think his name was, during this whole period got the boot. They rebranded as Bausch Health in 2018, hoping the new name would sort of clean the blood off the walls. But they're stuck with the debt because they went on this debt-fueled roll-up thing. They're still carrying like $20 billion in debt. So that's one of the problems with these guys, massive amounts of debt. The CEOs, they've had 2 CEOs since Pearson got kicked out, and they've gone on a massive selling spree of their assets to keep the wolves from the door. They spun out Bausch & Lomb, as I said, in 2022, but still own 90% of it. And that's also one of the problems with this, I think, from a market perspective. It's one of these Frankenstein monsters. We've talked about this in other episodes, these massive conglomerates that have stakes in lots of different businesses and lots of different sectors with different levels of ownership and different things. It's hard, I think, for a lot of investors to figure out how to value it.
Right.
These guys have everything from drugs to beauty lasers, gut meds, an eye care division, which is partly spun out. But from our perspective, it's still generating a ton of cash. So thumbs up, looking pretty good. Carrying a lot of debt, but generating a lot of cash. So despite all of the lawsuits and the stink and the bad blood, it's a money machine. It's throwing off $1.6 billion a year in operating cash, and its market cap is $2.6 billion. So it's a prop cap of about 1.6, I think, which is very, very low. Part of that cash comes from a gut health drug called Xifaxan. It's mostly for IBS and liver-related brain fog, called hepatic encephalopathy. Mr. Who's the elephant on Sesame Street?
Mr. Snuffleupagus.
Yeah, that's it. It's called hepatic snuffleupagus. It brings in about $2 billion a year, this one drug. And they had a recent court win that awarded them patent protection until 2029 on that. They sued another company that was selling something similar, I think. So they have got a few years of runway at least to keep milking that. The contact lenses division, Bausch & Lomb, that brand has been around since the 1800s. Don't think they were making contact lenses in the 1800s, but imagine what contact lenses would have looked like in the 1800s. But it's one of those, it's got a sort of a moat in terms of the brand. It's been around so long that it's a trusted brand when it comes to eyewear. They got very good channel penetration with optometrists and eyewear stores and that kind of things. B&L is sort of one of the go-to brands in that space. So it's kind of a moat, and it brings in nearly half the company's revenue.
So Bausch & Lomb got spun off, though. What are they doing? So Bausch still has the contact lens business. What does Bausch & Lomb do that's been spun out? Are they spectacles, are they?
No, well, they spun it off as a listed entity, but I think it's all still run by the same company.
Oh, okay.
So they own 90% of it. They spun it off as a float, but I think they still own it. Well, they still run it. They still run the business, I think. They just spun it off as another publicly listed entity. That's my assumption. That you don't think that's how it works?
Oh, you normally wouldn't retain ownership if you spun it off. You might keep some ownership. What's the point of spinning it off if you own?
Well, they've got 90%. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, there is talk that they're going to sell off the rest of it.
Okay.
So maybe it's a way of just offloading that to the public markets over time.
Right.
Spin off the division. I don't know. But I know that it generates about half the company's revenue. So the money is still coming into Bausch Health. So I'm assuming they still run it. I didn't go down into that level of detail. So why is it so cheap? Well, the market doesn't trust them, and for good reason. Even though they've had a couple of changes of CEOs since then, I imagine it's a culture that has spent decades manipulating the market and getting itself into trouble for it. So there's probably a lot of cultural legacy, I imagine, from that. They're still carrying around $20 billion in debt from the Valeant years. One bad quarter, one lawsuit go wrong, and the whole thing could look pretty wobbly. And they got a fair amount of legal overhang as well. There's still some level of opioid litigation, Xifaxan patent challenges that they have been dealing with. I think the Xifaxan is safe for a little while yet. But there's a fair amount of legal uncertainty over the business as well, which investors tend not to love. And then, as I said before, there's the conglomerate discount. Bausch still owns 90% of Bausch & Lomb, which trades separately, but there's this structural messiness to the valuation. Have you discovered anything? I see you doing some research. Did you ask ChatGPT?
I did. It said, back you up. It says Bausch & Lomb was spun off, but Bausch Health still retains a majority ownership stake. And
manages it day to day, is my understanding as well. Like the division is still part of the company. It's not like it's arm's length.
Yeah, it says it's a subsidiary. So I just can't get my head around why it's listed separately then. But anyway.
It's America, man. You guts to. It's America. Just spin off stuff. So they've been exploring selling the rest of B&L. If they do that, that could bring in billions of dollars and help them knock a serious dent in the debt. They've refinanced some of their ugliest debt. In 2025, they locked in a new series of loans that pushed out maturities, lowered their risk profile. Wasn't cheap. They had to pay a 10% coupon, but it bought them some time to pay off some of the debt that was coming due. If Trump's able to get rid of Powell and interest rates come down, they could refinance again and save more money. They're probably part of the Fire Jerome campaign, hashtag Fire Jerome. But the bottom line is, I think, it's a really impressive cash generation machine with some really great products that make a lot of money with a really bad history of bad corporate activity and getting caught out for it and having to pay lots of fines and share price collapse. And from $262 down to below $15 is a big hit. It's trading at $6, by the way. So it's had a pretty steep fall since the heydays.
But new management, I'm guessing, that's all. The old days are behind it.
Yeah.
You don't know.
As I said before, as I said before, like new CEOs, but it's a 30-year cultural legacy of doing things a certain way that I just know from working in big corporates like Microsoft. You can have a change as CEO, but you have 1,000 senior executives that are still there and their little, hierarchies and empires that are used to doing things a certain way, and there's a certain mindset. Come on, we wrote a book on psychopaths, Tony. Psychopathic cultures don't get cleansed easily, I think. If you've spent decades developing a psychopathic business culture that's like, yeah, screw the customer, who cares, we'll get away with it. And if we don't, we'll just pay the fines. Those sorts of cultures tend to have a residual effect, I think.
Have you seen?
I hope I'm wrong.
Have you seen any legal cases, though, since new management took over?
Well, they've got some residual cases around things like opioid litigation and stuff like that. But no, nothing.
Yeah, okay.
Nothing that looked like it did 10 years ago, but they're still cleaning up the mess from what happened 10 years ago. We don't know what's going to hit a year from now.
We're not going to red flag the current management, though.
No, I don't. No, new management. It's been 10 years, rebranding, all that. They're trying to do the right things. Like they're trying to clean up the debt anyway. They're trying to get rid of the debt, selling off divisions, making sound business decisions to dig themselves out of the hole, brand-wise as well as business-wise. It's not the sort of company that if I wouldn't want to go to a dinner party and hand over a business card and say, yeah, I work for Bausch. Remember the old Valeant? Yeah, that was us, man. I wasn't even comfortable saying I worked for Microsoft at the end of it. I had to hide my head in the sand. But as an investment, I think it looks pretty good. So as I said, bringing in a ton of cash, dirt cheap. Even after they pay, we were talking on our last show about operating cash flow versus free cash flow. Their free cash is $1.2 billion.
Right.
So they've got a lot of cash that they can pay off debt, invest in R&D, buy back shares, whatever it is. Their F score is 7 out of 9.
Very good.
Which is one of the strongest that I think we've seen on the QAV America show. So financial health-wise, it's pretty strong. Particularly, this is a company carrying $20 billion of debt. For a 7 out of 9 F score, that's pretty good. The other sorts of things that are interesting is the analyst consensus is that the earnings per share next year could hit $3.95, which would be about an 8 times bump on what they earned last year.
Right. So what's happening? What's driving that?
Just don't know, Tony.
Just don't know.
Just don't know, Tony.
Don't know, don't care.
Too much. Don't know. Analysts think it's going to make a lot more money next year than it made this year. That's good enough for me. I'm not an analyst. Just telling you what the analysts think. They're doing my work for me. What else have I got? I mean, I can take you through some more numbers just quickly. Quality rank, they scored on quality rank. They got a 68, so I score them for that because it's over 60. Couldn't score them for stock rank because it's below 90. Did score them for the F score. The price is not lower than our IV number 1, but it is lower than our IV number 2. Can't score them for price less than book because their book is negative because they're carrying $20 billion worth of debt.
Right.
Did score them for a 3-point uptrend, and there's a new 3-point upturn, or there was actually when I scored them. It's dipped below the sell line, but, those sorts of things I'd have to rescore them if I was doing it today. But when I did it a couple of weeks ago, they both scored for that. What else have I got? Growth over PE, greater than 1.5. They scored for that. Book value growth is not positive, though. PE less than yield, no. Yield, bank debt, no, because there's no yield. They're not paying a dividend. The IV number 2 is greater than twice the share price. So that's unusual. Scored for that as well.
Deep value.
Yeah, so the quality score actually was 79% when I did it. But I think I had to fix something in my sheet because there's a problem with the book price in the first round of scoring. I think it came down to about 67 when I re-rated it. But it had a QAV score of about 0.4, 0.45 at the end anyway. So a pretty good QAV score. But again, it's one of these things that we see, or I see quite a bit on QAV America. It's like a hold your nose stock.
Right.
Which to a degree, any mining company is here for me too.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dirty business. I don't like the business. I don't like the impacts of the business. I mean, I'm happy for these people to sell drugs, but they're obviously have a history of price gouging American consumers, which sucks to be an American consumer in the healthcare system, I guess. Come to Australia and get stuff cheaper. There was this thing, it's a funny thing. I saw Trump gave a conference a couple of weeks ago. He was talking about a friend of his who was in the UK who had to buy Ozempic. Did you see this?
No.
Oh my God, it was so funny. Trump's, doing this press conference and he goes, it's a friend of mine. He's a very, very successful businessman, very famous. You'd all know the name. He's very fat. He's very, 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 very fat guy. Very ugly guy. Very, very fat. But you'd know him. He's very successful. Anyway, he says he's on holiday in England with his family and he'd run out of Ozempic and he went to buy it in the UK and it was like 1/100th of the price that it costs him in the US. And he got on the phone to Trump and said, what the hell? Why are drugs so cheaper? And then Trump says, well, we're gonna slash all the drugs. He said, this press conference, he said, we're going to cut the prices by 50%, 60%, more than 100% in some cases. Like, really? You're going to cut the price by more than 100%? You're going to make it free? You're going to pay people to take the drug? What the hell are you talking about? But then he's come out in the last week and said that they're going to start punishing Australia if we keep making our drugs cheap.
Well, we have the pharmaceutical benefit scheme where the government negotiates on price for pharmaceutical companies rather than each chemist chain or doctor's network or whatever, which the US pharmaceutical companies don't like. Probably Bausch doesn't like. Yeah.
So he's gonna
up our tariffs.
Penalize us.
Yeah.
Penalize us if we keep making healthcare cost effective for Australians.
Yeah.
Anywho, what do you think of Bausch Health, Tony, from all of that?
Well, look, certainly was aware of Valeant, and so
Were you?
Haven't heard about it.
You would have been living in Canada around about those times,
yeah,
weren't you?
and heard of Bill Ackman's big loss on it too. So,
Right.
yeah, was aware of that. So, look, I haven't researched this company. I can't vouch for the rebranding and the change of management, but I'm assuming it's an improvement. Um, I'd have to do some research into that. Cash flow looks extremely strong, but they're still carrying a lot of debt. So, from the quality point of view, I think they don't rank as high in Stockopedia as the F score might suggest for a quality ranking. I think they were down in the 60s from memory. But yeah, look, cash flow solves a lot of problems, and if they can sell off something like their majority stake in Bausch and Lomb and pay off the debt, it's cleared up quite quickly. So, I like the fact it's
They
throwing
get
off
a
cash and we're buying it very cheaply.
Stockopedia gives them a 97 for value.
Yeah, what's the quality ranking?
68.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Stock rank is 74, 68
yeah.
for quality, but a 97 for value.
That's probably a good summary, though, isn't it?
Hmm.
Like, quality's down because of the debt, but it's a deep value buy. Yeah, which is
But
our
a
game.
7 for the F score,
Mm.
you know. So they can pay their debt. They've
Yeah.
renegotiated the debt. They can meet the debt. They're generating enough cash to pay the debt. But yeah, so a bit different from the usual
Very.
shipping companies and financial services firms that we've covered. I should say we don't hold them in our US portfolio. We don't, we're fully invested in the US portfolio. I should also do just an update while I'm here on our US portfolio, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we at? Let's have a look. So for the last 12 months, we're up 23.7% versus the S&P 500 up 14.54%. Year to date, we're down 15.7 versus the S&P up 7.2. Thank you, Donald Trump, for all your hard work.
Is that calendar year to date or financial year to date?
Yeah, calendar year to date,
which is the
since the
same
beginning
thing
of
in the
January.
US. Yeah.
Yeah. And all time, so we started this portfolio back in September 2023. We're up 57.97% versus the S&P 500 up 41.89%. So we're doing okay versus the index, not as good as we were pre-Trump. Late last year, we were up 90.8% versus the S&P up 34%. The Trumponomics has had a massive detrimental effect on our portfolio this year. It's the greatest economy. It's going to be the best economy. It's going to do great. Has not done great for our portfolio over there, but it was doing so great before that it's still doing okay.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Very good. Thank you, Ken.
All right. Well, that is QAV. We're into after hours. TK, what do you got? What do you got for me?
Well, I've been watching the British Open, so that's been my sort of entertainment diet for the weekend, or the Open Championship as they prefer to call it. They get quite prickly when people call it the British Open, but everyone calls it the British Open. So,
why do they get prickly about that?
Because it's officially called the Open Championship. And when I've pushed people over there as to why they get upset about it, apparently, and I don't know if this is the case, but apparently Northern Ireland is part of the UK, but not Great Britain. So they call it the British Open. If we call it the British Open, we're not including Northern Ireland, which is where it was played this year. But that's, splitting hairs. You can, and when the English split hairs on things like that, you can see why the English language is so hard to learn if you weren't born speaking it.
I also see why everyone hates the Poms. Like, just get over yourselves. You
Exactly.
get the Great Britain, England, the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Come on.
Just call it the British Open like everyone else does. But that was good fun. Good fun to watch. There was at Port Rush in Northern Ireland, which is where I went to with Ruddy when it was last there in 2019, prior to COVID. Had a great time in Northern Ireland and the rest of Ireland on that trip. They had I think this year they had much better weather. When we were there, it was just cyclonic, the wind and the rain. And was won by a local Irish player. This year it was warm and sunny, and the Americans prevailed. So that was interesting. But the other thing we did this week was, after watching The Offer, Jenny wanted to go back and watch The Godfather, so we did that, which was great. She hadn't seen it since it came out, and I hadn't seen it for a couple
What?
of years. Yeah.
She hadn't seen it since 1972?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Chrissy and I kind of watch it at least once a year.
Oh, we don't do that. But it was great to watch The Offer and then go back and watch The Godfather and just get blown away by it again, and knowing some of the backstory on how it was created, and really came away with the feeling of it being just like every scene is so special and just delivers a punchline in every scene. Set up, usually with a background of something big happening, a wedding, a funeral, whatever, and then tie it into a couple of protagonists and then punchline every scene, which was really, really quality filmmaking.
Yeah, and like it just holds up so well.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
so beautifully shot. The
Mhm.
performances are so great. The story's so great. And the second one, arguably even better. The part 2 with
Yeah, well,
going backwards and forwards.
that's our next watching this week. Hopefully to get to that.
Yeah. Well, thank God for Bob Evans, who saved it on the cutting room floor, as we joked about last week. Yeah, no, just every time, like I never get tired of watching The Godfather. It's just such a masterpiece. My only complaint over the years has always been James Caan,
Ooh, not Italian.
as Santino. Not Italian. Doesn't look at all Italian.
No. And was the pick to play Sonny, and that was the compromise.
Yeah.
They said, we'll keep him in, but we'll give it to Al Pacino, but we'll keep James Caan in.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like he just does not fit with the rest of the cast at all. But
Impressive.
Yeah.
He's impressive. I mean, physically very
Yeah.
impressive. Plays the part really well. It's a great part, but yeah, it doesn't look like he's part of the family.
He can do anger very well, and goes off his rocker and all that kind of stuff. It's great. Don't want my brother coming out of the stalls with his dick in his hand. Great line. Yeah, anyway, very good.
Mm.
Godfather. Well, I haven't really watched anything to speak of. Was watching a bit of John Wick 2 last night. Still just appreciating John Wick. Was doing knife defense at Kung Fu this morning with my Sifu. And he was like, you get stabbed and that's it. It's all over. And I was like, I saw John Wick get stabbed and he went on and fought 500 guys. I saw him get shot in the abdomen and then ran at full speed for hours and hours through catacombs and took out a bunch of guys. Was doing kung fu on people after getting shot in the belly. Either being shot or stabbed in the belly isn't as bad as you're making it out, or I shouldn't believe everything I see in a John Wick film. Either way.
That's like
Anyway.
a comment we made about The Godfather with the Corleone guys can take all the bullets. Like you see Don Corleone being shot, and he gets shot about 5 or 6 times, and he falls on the car and rolls over and lives. And then you see Sonny being shot at the toll booth, and he's like machine gunned, but he still gets out of the car and stands up, and he gets machine gunned again. And he's takes about 30 bullets to kill him.
Yeah, all the squibs going off. That's crazy. But then, I've been reading this book on Robert Maxwell, and it's fascinating. Like, I had no idea. I mean, I kind of, I remember hearing about Robert Maxwell in the news in the 80s and when he died and that kind of stuff. Never really paid that much attention to him. Knew he had a great rivalry with Rupert. See, Trump has sued Rupert for $10 billion or $20 billion or something now. So he's suing Rupert, who owns the Wall Street Journal, but also owns Fox News, which is sort of his number one fan base. And then there was a story that J.D. Vance went and spent a couple of hours with Rupert and Lachlan a month or so ago. And then that's followed by the Wall Street Journal article about Trump's birthday picture drawing for Epstein and the suing. Like, what's going on? How does Trump think this is going to play out if he's suing the guy that owns Fox News?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
hard to it's hard to
I
figure
think,
out how much is
well,
performative theater, how much is real.
I think Trump's lashing out to try and stop the Epstein files from coming out. But I don't know what's in it for Rupert to prosecute it.
Well, the word on the street has always been that Rupert completely loathes Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as everyone pretty much does, including his own administration, I think. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's fascinating. But
It
anyway,
is
the Robert
fascinating.
Maxwell thing.
And
Maxwell's story is
sorry, just
fascinating.
before that, did you see
Yeah.
Stephen Colbert's been cancelled?
Yeah.
And
And the theories behind that.
yeah, yeah,
I read Nate Silver did a big post on it today. Did you see that?
no, I don't follow Nate Silver.
He did a big analysis on it and talked about all the different theories. And, there's no doubt that late night shows and the big television networks are doing it tough. The economics of all of that is hard to justify these days with the fragmentation of attention towards TikTok and streaming and all that kind of stuff. Whether or not it was just a political hot potato after Colbert called Paramount's payoff to Trump to get out of the court case over 60 Minutes a big fat bribe, and they just decided, you know what, we don't need you anymore, we'll get rid of you because Larry Ellison's son wants to take over Paramount, needs Trump's approval, etc., etc. I don't know. Interesting how all these big media companies and big law firms are paying off Trump.
Yeah,
As
it's so-called
Colbert said, it just looks a bribe.
so-called
It's a shakedown.
independent organisations. Yeah.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Anyway, back to Robert Maxwell. He was born in this little town in the middle of nowhere in Czechoslovakia, sort of on the border of Czechoslovakia and all the other countries around there. Born to a poor family of 9 kids. When he was 16, he left home and went and joined.
Was that called the Maxwell House?
Well, funny you should mention that. So his name is not Robert
No.
Maxwell. No, his name is like Jan Koch or something. Changed his name 3 or 4 times during World War II, settled on Robert Maxwell. And then later on, when he started building his empire in the United Kingdom, in London, he did buy a building and called it Maxwell House.
Was there a big
But-
coffee, like a big spoon coming out of the roof?
I think he got sued or they had some trademark issue with the coffee brand in the United States. But anyway, born in this poor family, 9 kids. He goes off, joins World War II, goes off, and later finds out that his entire family got killed by the Nazis. His mother, all of his siblings, except 2 sisters, survived. They got gassed at Auschwitz. His father got shot by the Nazis. So he's a Jew, right? They all got exterminated. But he ends up sort of becoming part of military intelligence in World War II, working for the British, and changes his name and adopts a British accent and takes on the persona of he's a bit like Don Draper in Mad Men. He just takes on this persona of this British upper class gentleman, ends up getting funded by MI6 to buy the rights to a scientific publishing business out of Germany that was trying to figure out what to do with all of its scientific literature that it hadn't been able to export or sell globally during the war. So he buys all of these books, but it's funded by MI6. So the big question at the moment with the Epstein stuff, which you probably have seen, is whether or not Epstein was working for Mossad and the CIA, and how the line from him goes through Ghislaine Maxwell to her father, who it seems was a Mossad agent or was Mossad adjunct or something. I'm still trying to get to the part of the book where they talk about that, but he did seem to be, his early entrepreneurial activities were funded by MI6. And when he died under mysterious circumstances, falling off his yacht just after he'd taken over a big New York tabloid. That's a great story. So he took over this tabloid in New York in 1991 that was about to go out of business. He took it over and then made the managing editor of the newspaper Paul Rupert Murdoch. And just to tell him, Robert Maxwell has just bought this paper. That was the phone call. So he calls Rupert. Rupert was in Australia at the time, apparently. Calls Rupert in the middle of the night. Rupert answers the phone. He goes, yes. He goes, oh, it's John Hodge from the Daily World or whatever it was. Robert Maxwell wants me to tell you that he just bought this paper in New York. Because, of course, Rupert owned the New York Post at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He said Rupert just burst out laughing and said, tell him that's fantastic. Just the rivalry between the two was great. Anyway, so when he died, there was this massive state funeral for him in Israel, attended by prime ministers and the former heads of all of the intelligence services and all this kind of stuff. So he was beloved by Israel for some reason. Anyway, but so his whole family died. Then he had 9 kids of his own, and 2 of them died very young. One from, encephalitis, and one from a car accident. His eldest son got brain damaged in a car accident, survived for like another 10 or 12 years, but was a vegetable. And it's a lot of tragedy in his life, but managed to somehow turn himself into this media baron. And by the sounds of it, kind of one of those sort of psychopathic dudes who just treated everybody around him like shit and, yelled and screamed and abused his way. Could be extremely charming and flattering, but also extremely volatile and abusive. And when he took over the newspaper in New York in 1991, they were talking about how the security staff welcomed him to the building, and the first thing he did was fire all of the security staff because he wanted to replace them with his own security staff. So he just walked in and got rid of everybody, got rid of all of the staff in the paper, and et cetera, et cetera. Firing the people left, right, and center on day one. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. That's about it, Tony. That's all I got for you. I've been listening to a lot of the Go-Betweens too. A lot of the Go-Betweens this week. Watched a good documentary on YouTube on the Go-Betweens, on the 16 Lovers Lane album, which was fun.
Oh, look. I watched that Tarantino clip on Dirty Harry too. It was great fun.
It's great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
very good.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Talk to you next time.
Thanks
Tony.
Bye.